Imagine checking your bank account after another month of working harder than ever. The number hasn't moved. In fact, adjusted for inflation, you're actually poorer than you were in 2008. That's not a feeling. That's a fact. Now zoom out. You're standing on a train platform in Birmingham. It's raining, obviously. Your train was supposed to be here 20 minutes ago. The ticket price went up 5% since last year. But somehow the service got worse. You look around at the crumbling infrastructure, the high streets filled with vape shops and betting terminals, and you feel it in your gut. Something is fundamentally broken. Welcome to the United Kingdom. Once the workshop of the world, the empire on which the sun never set. Today, the sick man of Europe. Again. But here's what nobody's telling you. This isn't an accident. This isn't bad luck. This isn't even Brexit's fault. At least, not entirely. Britain didn't fall to foreign enemies. Britain committed economic suicide. 7 self-inflicted wounds. Each one a deliberate choice. Each one a knife in its own back. How did the country that invented the Industrial Revolution forget how to build things? How did we create a system that makes young people poorer than retirees? And most importantly, is there any way out? Today, we're going to dissect the autopsy of an empire. Quick note before we dive in. What I'm sharing is analysis and research, not professional financial advice. Your situation is unique. Always do your own research and consult professionals before making any major financial decisions. Now, let's start with round number 1. Let's start with the elephant in the room. The reason you feel broke is because the country is broke. But not in the way you might think. We aren't out of money. We're out of ideas and efficiency. Since 2008, British productivity has flatlined. If the UK had continued growing at its pre-2008 trend, the average worker, that's you, would be earning roughly £11,000 to £14,000 more per year right now. Think about that. Take a second. Imagine your bank account with an extra 11 grand in it every single year. That is the cost of this stagnation. But to understand why, we need to look at a tale of two workers. Let's travel to France. Meet Pierre. Pierre works in a factory. His boss, fearing strict French labor laws and high wages, invested millions in robots, automated assembly lines, and advanced software. Pierre pushes a button, monitors a screen, and produces 100 widgets an hour. He gets paid well because he generates a lot of value. Now cross the channel to meet Barry. Barry works in a similar industry in the UK, but Barry's boss didn't buy the robots. Why? Because UK labor is cheap and firing people is easy. It was cheaper to hire Barry and 2 of his mates to move boxes by hand than to invest in a £1 million machine. Barry works harder than Pierre. He sweats more. He breaks his back. But he only produces 20 widgets an hour because he's doing it manually. This is the UK economy in a nutshell. We have created a low investment, low wage trap. Business investment has been trailing the rest of the G7 for decades, but it fell off a cliff after 2016. British companies don't invest in new tech, new machinery, or training. They hoard cash or pay out dividends. And the government? Arguably worse. The UK has consistently had some of the lowest public investment levels in the advanced world. We're running a 21st century economy on Victorian infrastructure, competing with Silicon Valley using copper wire internet and a train network built when Queen Victoria was still in mourning. The decision was made somewhere in the 1980s. Margaret Thatcher looked at Britain's struggling factories and decided, we don't need to make things anymore. We'll just move money around. We turned London into the world's hedge fund. And while banking makes a lot of money for bankers, it sucks talent away from everything else. The smartest physicists and engineers in Britain aren't designing fusion reactors or high-speed trains. They're in the City of London writing algorithms to shave a fraction of a cent off a currency trade. We brain-drained ourselves. We hollowed out the real economy to build a casino. And when the casino bust in 2008, we realized we'd forgotten how to do anything else. Wound number 1. If productivity is the silent killer of the UK economy, housing is the loud, screaming murderer holding a knife to its throat. You cannot talk about why Britain is broken without talking about the fact that it is illegal to build anything. Let's play a game. Say you want to build a data center, a laboratory, or just a nice block of flats so people can live near their jobs. In Texas, you buy the land and build it. In Japan, you adhere to simple zoning laws and build it. In the UK, you enter the seventh circle of bureaucratic hell known as the Town and Country Planning Act of 1947. In 1947, in the rubble of post-war Britain, Parliament passed what seemed like a sensible law. It was supposed to prevent chaos. Instead, it planted a time bomb. This act nationalized the right to build. It gave local councils the power to say no to almost anything. And who sits on local councils? People who already own houses. People who don't want construction noise. People who want the value of their asset to go up forever. We call them NIMBYs, not in my backyard. But in the UK, they're more like bananas. Build absolutely nothing, anywhere, near anything. Let's look at the damage. In the late 90s, the average house cost about 4 times the average salary. Today, it's over 8 times. In London, it can be 12 to 14 times. This isn't just annoying. It destroys the economy. Here's how. 1. Talent freezes. If you get a great job offer in Cambridge or London, you might turn it down because the rent is £2,000 for a shoebox. The most productive cities can't get the workers they need. 2. Money vanishes. Young people spend 40 to 50% of their income on rent. That's money not being spent in local businesses, not being invested, not starting new companies. It's simply being transferred from the productive young to the idle old landlords. 3. The Green Belt lie. We're told we can't build because we need to protect the beautiful British countryside. But a huge chunk of the Green Belt isn't rolling hills and idyllic forests. It's intensive agriculture with no public access, or worse, golf courses. Here's a shocking stat. Golf courses cover more land in Surrey than housing does. Let that sink in. We have prioritized a game for wealthy retirees over homes for the workforce that keeps the country alive. This has created a feudal system. If your parents own property, you're fine. You'll inherit wealth. If they don't, you risk becoming a serf, potentially working your entire life to pay off someone else's mortgage. Wound number 2. The UK economy has essentially become a housing market with a small country attached to it. So we have a productivity crisis and a housing crisis. Bad, right? But what if I told you the government saw these problems and decided the best solution was to take a sledgehammer to the foundations of the state? Enter 2010. The global financial crisis just ravaged the world. The UK deficit is high. The new coalition government comes in with a very catchy, very dangerous metaphor. The nation's credit card is maxed out. June 22, 2010. George Osborne stands at the dispatch box. Young, ambitious, convinced he understood economics better than the economists. He uttered the phrase that would define a decade. We're all in this together. It was catchy. It was simple. And it was catastrophically wrong. Here's the fatal flaw. The government is not a household. If you stop spending at the pub owner loses income. But the economy carries on. If the government stops spending, they fire nurses, cancel construction projects, freeze wages. The people who lost those jobs then stop spending in the shops. The shops pay less tax. The government has less revenue than before. So they cut spending again. It's a doom loop. Between 2010 and 2019, the UK underwent one of the most severe programs of spending cuts in modern history. They slashed local council funding by nearly 50%. They froze public sector pay. They cut police by 20,000. The result? We're living in the ruins. The NHS waiting list hit over 7 million people. Over 2.8 million people are now long-term sick. People who want to work but are physically or mentally broken. And the system that's supposed to fix them has collapsed. We essentially stopped performing maintenance on the country. It's like owning a car and deciding to save money by never changing the oil. Sure, you save £50 today, but 3 years later, the engine explodes and costs you £5,000. We saved pennies in the 2010s to spend billions in the 2020s just to stand still. We closed the libraries. We let the potholes grow. We let the schools crumble. Literally. Look up, RAAC concrete. Wound number 3. Austerity didn't trim the fat. It cut into muscle and bone. And an emaciated athlete cannot win a gold medal. Deep breath. Don't scroll down to the comments just yet. We have to talk about it. Numbers don't have feelings. In 2016, the UK voted to leave the single biggest free trade bloc on the planet. The logic was global Britain, break free from European shackles and trade with the world. The reality has been complicated. Here's the boring but critical truth. Trade barriers cost money. Before Brexit, a business in Manchester could sell a widget to a customer in Munich as easily as selling to Birmingham. No forms, no checks, just commerce. Meet James, an artisan cheesemaker from Somerset. Before Brexit, he could sell his cheddar to a restaurant in Paris as easily as one in Portsmouth. One form. Done. After Brexit? Veterinary certificates. Customs declarations. Export health certificates. For cheese, James didn't stop exporting because he wanted to. He stopped because the paperwork now costs more than the profit. According to the Office for Budget Responsibility, Brexit is on track to reduce the UK's potential GDP by 4% over the long term. 4% might sound small, but 4% of GDP is about £100 billion a year. That's almost the entire budget for the Department of Education. Gone. Poof. Vanished into the friction of red tape. But the immediate damage wasn't just trade. It was uncertainty. Investors hate uncertainty. Between 2016 and 2020, while the UK government argued with itself about what Brexit actually meant, hard, soft, red, white, and blue, businesses sat on their hands. Why build a factory in Sunderland if you don't know if you can sell the cars to Europe next year? Why set up your European HQ in London if the data laws might change? So, they went to Dublin. They went to Amsterdam. They went to Paris. Is Brexit the only reason the economy is broken? No. We were stagnant way before 2016. But Brexit acted like a multiplier. It took a fragile, low productivity economy and threw sand in the gears. Wound number 4. We voluntarily introduced sanctions on our own economy. If housing is a pyramid scheme, the UK welfare state is fast becoming a Ponzi scheme. And I'm sorry to say this, but we need to talk about grandma. The UK is getting old fast. By 2040, nearly 1 in 4 people will be aged 65 or over. Generally, people living longer is a good thing. But economically, it presents a math problem that no politician has the guts to solve. We have created a system designed to protect the old at the expense of the young. Exhibit A. The triple lock. It sounds like a wrestling move, but it's actually a guarantee that the state pension rises every year by whichever is highest. Inflation, average earnings, or 2.5%. Think about what that means. If the economy crashes and wages fall, like in 2020, pensioners get a 2.5% raise anyway. If inflation goes crazy, like in 2022, pensioners get an inflation-matching raise over 10%. Meanwhile, the working population, the people actually generating the wealth, have seen their real wages stagnate for 15 years. The result? For the first time in history, the average pensioner in the UK is now less likely to be in poverty than the average working family. Let that sink in. We are taxing the working poor to subsidize the asset-rich retired. The tax burden is hitting a 70-year high. Why? Because the NHS consumes an ever-growing slice of the pie to treat age-related conditions. Politics is a numbers game. Old people vote, young people don't. So policies are written to keep house prices high, pensions generous, while tuition fees skyrocket and national insurance goes up. It is a transfer of wealth from the future to the past. If you're under 40, you are basically the designated driver at a party where everyone else is drinking expensive champagne on your credit card. Wound number 5. Let's get in a helicopter and fly over the UK. If you look at Germany, you see multiple engines of power. Berlin for tech and culture, Frankfurt for finance, Munich for industry, Hamburg for shipping. It's a balanced engine. Now look at the UK. It's a one-engine plane. And that engine is London. The inequality between London and the southeast and the rest is staggering. It's worse than the divide between East and West Germany before the wall came down. In London, they just spent £19 billion on the Elizabeth Line, a shiny, air-conditioned, high-speed underground railway that is genuinely world-class. In the north of England, people are still commuting on trains that are essentially buses bolted onto 1980s truck chassis. They're slow, they leak, and they're never on time. The government promised to fix this. They announced HS2, a bullet train connecting London, Birmingham, Manchester, and Leeds. It would shrink the country and supercharge the northern economy. Then on October 4, 2023, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak killed the dream. The train would now go from London to slightly outside Birmingham and stop. It is the perfect metaphor for the UK economy. Over budget, delayed, and ultimately giving up before it reaches the people who actually need it. Huge swathes of the UK, Wales, the Northeast, Cornwall, are statistically poorer than parts of the former Soviet bloc in Eastern Europe. We're running a country where the capital city operates like Singapore and the provinces operate like struggling post-industrial zones without a plan. You cannot run a G7 economy on one city. When London sneezes, the whole country catches pneumonia. Wound number 6. 7 self-inflicted wounds. Productivity collapse. Housing cartel. Austerity scars. Brexit friction. Demographic time bomb. Regional inequality. But the biggest cost isn't in the GDP figures. It's psychological. The British dream, the unwritten contract that said work hard, buy a house, your kids will be richer than you, has been shredded. For the first time in modern history, the next generation of Britons is on track to be poorer than their parents. And when you break the social contract, things get ugly. We're seeing a massive brain drain. Meet Sarah. She's 32, a junior doctor in Manchester. She's been on the NHS waiting list for a GP appointment for 4 weeks, while treating patients on the same waiting list. Last month, she accepted a job in Sydney. Not because she wanted to leave, because after 8 years of training, her salary still can't afford a 1-bedroom flat within an hour of her hospital. Sarah isn't betraying Britain. Britain betrayed Sarah. So, is it over? Is the UK destined to become a rainy museum island? A theme park for American tourists with a nuclear arsenal attached? Not necessarily. Keep in mind, this analysis is based on current trends and the data we have now. Economic forecasts can change based on policy decisions, global events, and other factors. But here's what the trajectory looks like. Fixing this requires something British politicians have been allergic to for decades. Hard truths. 1. Bulldoze the planning laws. Piss off the NIMBYs. Build millions of homes so young people can actually afford to live. 2. Invest for the long term. Stop cutting capital budgets to pay for day-to-day bills. Build the train lines. Build the reservoirs. Build the labs. 3. Fix the trade relationship. We don't have to rejoin the EU politically, but we have to stop pretending that trade friction is a freedom. 4. Tax wealth, not just work. Shift the burden from the guy working 60 hours a week to the guy sitting on £5 million of unearned land appreciation. It's doable. Countries recover from worse. Germany rebuilt from rubble. South Korea went from poverty to a tech giant in 40 years. But it requires us to stop obsessing over our imperial past, statues, flags, World War II nostalgia, and start obsessing about our future. We need to stop acting like a retired empire and start acting like a hungry, modern, mid-sized nation. The empire is dead. The question is, do we want to be a living nation or a graveyard with a nice gift shop? If you're feeling a bit depressed, I get it. But knowing why things are broken is the first step to fixing them, or at least understanding why your train is late and your rent is high. If you want to understand how other economies collapsed, check out my video on the fall of Europe. Or if you want to know why the US housing market might be next, let me know and I'll prioritize it. Hit that like button if this helped you understand the mess. Subscribe if you want to stay ahead of the next crisis. And let me know in the comments. If you could change one policy to fix Britain, what would it be? Build on the Green Belt? Rejoin the EU? Tax the rich? Thanks for watching. Good luck out there. You're going to need it.